This is Pulse of the Pack.
There's Bledsoe. Down he goes. And there's Reggie White. And that's that hump move. Reggie's coming again. And Reggie White. Reggie White's going to take over this game right now.
Begins the count. Takes the snap. He has the quarterback. He's able to touch down the Packers around in front. 20 to 17. There's 13 seconds showing on the clock, and the Green Bay Packers are going to be world champions, NFL champions for the third straight year.
Barr lays it up for Freeman, and it's incomplete. Or did he make the catch at the 15? What are they going to rule it? He caught it? Touchdown! He did what?
And hello, everyone, and welcome to Pulse of the Pack, our second episode since joining Game On Wisconsin. Find us on Twitter at GameOnWI. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, Game On Wisconsin. You can follow us. We are now on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, wherever the hell you like your podcasts. You can find us there as well. And of course, the website where everything is stored at GameOnWI.com. I'm your host this evening. I am Jacob Westendorf, fresh off a trip to the Holy Lands in Green Bay, Wisconsin. You can follow me on Twitter personally at Jacob Westendorf. And I am joined, of course, by Jason Perrone. Jason, you're at the Packers Hall of Fame today, and so was I just yesterday.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I miss the memo? A day late? I was wondering why you weren't here. So I guess I'll just hang out here till you come back next.
Okay, that'll be a couple months, so that'll be interesting to see on that. But and then, as you notice, we are in a bit of a short-handed role at this point. Paul's not here, which certainly makes us sad. So there's Paul's not here with a sad face right there. But if you want, you can follow him at Paul_Brettel. Jason, we've had a bit of activity, and I think the start here is we can say Brian Gutekunst and Matt LaFleur spoke to the media today, and we're able to talk about a bunch of different things and really just kind of a wonky, weird offseason that we're currently having and in the midst of. It was not as what are they going to do? They're not going to tell you everything that you want to hear, and they're not going to tell you everything that you want to know. But it was an interesting press conference. It was good to hear from those guys nonetheless. Tomorrow, Kenny Clark and Aaron Rodgers will be speaking to the media, so be sure to tune in to that as well. But Gutekunst, they were asked a lot of questions about their COVID-19 precautions, what they plan to do. As of right now, it appears that the Packers have 3 players on the COVID-19 watch list, which does not mean that they tested positive. Sometimes it feels like it's being reported that way, but it does not mean that they tested positive. It just means they've either tested positive, that is one possibility, or they've come into close contact with somebody that either has had it or could have been exposed to it. So as of right now, those 3 players are Mason Crosby, Jay Sternberger, and Greg Roberts, the outside linebacker, undrafted free agent from a year ago. So as of right now, it's just those 3 guys, and obviously we'll get to the opt-outs and some of the situations that have gone on surrounding the team so far. But Jason, did you take anything real significant away from Gutekunst today? I mean, outside of maybe the discussion. Well, there's one thing specifically I do know that we'll get to, but outside of what we're going to talk about with Jay Sternberger specifically, is there anything that you took away from what Gutekunst had to say today?
Not a whole lot, and I didn't expect much to come out from it either. So there'll be more to be gleaned once they start actually testing and getting into it. I mean, we have a week worth of camp now, which means they're, a week, 10 days away from actually playing some football. So that's when I'm really going to start to hone in and look for what's going on. But I guess the other thing is, no news can also mean good news in a way. When you look at around the league, a lot of other teams have multiple players that are opting out. Former Packers, interestingly enough, Danny Vitale last week, and now Geronimo Allison has opted out in Detroit. I have to wonder if maybe the Packers dodged a bit of a bullet in that those guys are not with the team anymore. Of course, they could be situational. You never know. I'm not passing judgment there, but that was about it.
Yeah, my thought on that, just real quick, since you brought it up, is I don't think that you're going to see a whole lot of it. I think you hear a lot of whatabouts and what do they call it now on Twitter? Whataboutism with people shaming players for opting out. I really don't think that there are a lot of people that are going to do that. And I think that the ones that are, you can safely ignore them and just call them stupid and let it go over their head. It's very simple. If a player feels that he's not safe this season and wants to opt out of the season, that is his decision. It's also the decision of those players that if they feel like they could give it a go and should play, because it sounds like for all intents and purposes, the teams are preparing as if they are going to play. And I've said it about 1 million different times that the NFL, the National Football League, is a $1 billion business with a B. And for everyone's reaction that is, oh, just cancel the season, they're not punting on $15 billion. That's just not going to happen. Even if they get a lesser version of that giant pie that they normally have, there will be games this year. Whether they finish or are able to finish, I don't know. That remains to be seen. I think that there's been some discussion this week as to why the NFL couldn't go into a bubble like the NBA has. And I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding, willing ignorance, whatever you want to call it. But putting the NFL into a bubble is just not as feasible and easy, if you will, as an NBA situation where they have 22 teams in the bubble right now. You multiply that by 15 players. That's 220 plus what's 22 times 5? That would be 110. So that's 360 players. And a good majority of them are going to be home after 1 week. 360 players, 63 players on a 53-man or a 53-man plus 10-man practice squad. And that doesn't even include coaches for the NFL. Do the math. It takes 4 NBA teams to get to just under one NFL roster. And that's not even including coaching staff, traveling staff, all that stuff either. It's not feasible. It's a nice idea. I understand the thought process behind it. It's just not feasible at this point. So it's unfortunate that it is the way that it is. Brian Gutekunst said today that they're going to have positive tests and they have to prepare for it. I'm not saying that's the right or the wrong attitude to have necessarily, but that tells you that the NFL is intent upon playing and they're not going to let a positive test or two, or, I don't know what the threshold is, and I'm not going to pretend to know whether that's right or wrong. It's not my decision to make. So that's how it's going to be. The NFL is going to play. Like I said, they're going to start. Whether or not they finish remains to be seen. And that was just a little interesting insight from Gutekunst today as well. On the football side of things, Goody and LaFleur obviously talked today, but on the football side of things, we had Gutekunst talking about Jay Sternberger. And I think that he said today that he is a big part of what the team is going to accomplish. Obviously right now he's not practicing. Nobody is. The NFL or the veterans report tomorrow. So Sternberger technically qualifies as a veteran, I suppose. But the offense, they say, is going to revolve around a lot of things that he can do. And they think he's a matchup problem and a lot of different things that I told you before he came out of the NFL or came out of college into the NFL. So I think that was interesting to hear Gutekunst kind of give the same talking points that I've given for Jay Sternberger since last season. Now, that's not to say I'm smarter than Brian Gutekunst. I'm just telling you that their thought process kind of lines up with mine on that regard as well. So I find that interesting. I find that fun. And I find that I have a lot of hope for him in his second season. And Jason, I know that you're a big fan of his as well. And what are you looking for in year 2 for Jay Sternberger? Obviously, last week we talked about him quite a bit as a breakout player, but he's a big portion, especially with Devin Funchess, which we'll get to here in a minute. But with Devin Funchess not coming in, he's kind of one of the veterans for an odd, one of the most talented veterans, if you will, on this team. And the Packers are going to need him to be successful.
Yeah. Sternberger was my choice for breakout player this year. So obviously I don't doubt that he's not going to do big things. If he doesn't, then maybe it's because there's so many weapons and only one ball to throw around. But there's no reason to think he isn't going to be really good. He did good. He was willing to do the dirty work and block last year, and then he started catching some balls in the playoffs. So if Aaron Rodgers is going to look for him in the postseason, I have every reason to believe that Sternberger is going to be that guy. I mean, even if it's a matter of Jimmy Graham is gone, you don't have him anymore. So if you're going to look for that particular role or that route, well, that guy's wearing 87 now. So you're going to throw the ball to Jay Sternberger. So, yeah, I mean, he's kind of the most low-hanging fruit breakout player, I think, choice that you have on the roster or at least one of maybe 3 at the most, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I definitely think that's the case. And having him, to start the season is going to be a big deal. We'll see what happens if and when he's cleared from that list we were speaking about earlier. But he's a big deal, and they're going to move him inside, outside, in the backfield. I mean, he's a versatile piece on this offense and he might be the second most talented pass catcher on this team at the moment. So that is also an interesting dynamic that the Packers have, because it's Devontae and a lot of unknowns after that. So if there's a lot of unknowns, that means somebody can step up and make this team better than what they were a season ago. And like I've said before, if Sternberger is just a replacement level player, and that's it, just a replacement level player, then he's an upgrade, a significant one over Jimmy Graham from a season ago. Now you've got other guys on this roster that are going to vie for some stuff. Mercedes Lewis is going to get time on the field. Robert Tonyan might be fighting for some time, and Josiah DeGuara obviously is one of those players they spent a pretty high pick on, a 3rd-round pick on, to get him in the fold. They clearly think highly of him as well. And Matt LaFleur, as I've mentioned, and will until, I don't know, it stops being funny to me, but he loves Josiah. And I think that, again, the offense here, the thought is that the Packers maybe didn't do enough to upgrade at wide receiver. And I think that we're just going to have to get used to the idea that the offense is going to be different. And with different means it's going to look obviously different than what we've had before in the past. They needed 3, 4, 5 good wide receivers to run the McCarthy spread and everything like that. Now they necessarily don't. They're going to throw more to tight ends, to running backs, to some of the wide receivers as well, but they're going to have more time on the field where they're not running with 3 wide receivers at a time. So that's a big deal. And I think Sternberger's got a really good opportunity to get something going in his second season and become a staple of this Packers offense now, both and in the near future. So that'll be interesting. When Matt LaFleur talked, he kind of talked about the rules. They asked Gutekunst, and Gutekunst deferred to LaFleur through if he was going to have rules on, punishments for players that were going out in public after games or practice or anything like that. And LaFleur basically said that, he's not going to have a set in stone rule, but that the guys are going to have a really hard time looking at their teammates in the eye if they're not doing the right things off the field. And we've seen it. Baseball has had 2 teams with coronavirus outbreaks at the moment. And by outbreaks, I mean more than like 1 or 2 guys. And it's been reported now on both of those teams that they were either out in public at a casino, or I believe one was a nightclub. And I would have to check on that to be sure. But that's the idea, and kind of the things they're trying to avoid is that basically you go to work, you go home, and you quarantine yourself after that. And the NFL, by its very nature, obviously is a contact sport. So you're going to have enough of that stuff in general to keep going through things. He also talked about quarantining the quarterbacks, which I thought was an interesting idea. Just trying to keep that, because we know the deal. Quarterback is the most valuable position on the team. And getting a backup edge rusher on the field as opposed to there's a big difference between playing Rashawn Gary for a whole game and having to play Jordan Love or Tim Boyle. Nothing against those 2 guys, but they're not Aaron Rodgers. So talking about quarantining those guys was an interesting thought as well. But Jason, anything from LaFleur, what are your hopes on, something I think with this team, with as cohesive as it is, I think there's going to be a lot of guys that are really accountable to each other. Something I've, noticed from just paying attention to baseball is the New York Yankees. A lot of their guys have talked about Brett Gardner, Garrett Cole, Aaron Judge, basically saying, we don't want to be the one. Nobody wants to be the one that's going to derail this team by doing something that they don't necessarily need to be doing. So I found that interesting. And I think that this Packers team is close knit, similar to the way that New York team is. Yeah.
If you have the right players, I think it's fine. I like that the self-accountability. It's always going to be better than trying to be a hard ass coach, and players just aren't going to respond well to that. But you've got to have the right guys on your roster. And hopefully the Packers continue to have that, because if they don't, then that's obviously going to be a problem. But you've got guys like Rodgers, Za'Darius, Preston, the veterans that have been on the team for a while that, I mean, I'll just say this. It sounds a little general, like a generalization, but I do honestly think that I don't think any player is going out with the intention that they think they're going to get sick. I think they honestly just don't think it pertains to them. And it might just be a youth thing where they've just been healthy all their life and they don't feel like, hey, I don't usually get sick, so I'm fine. I can go to this, casino, nightclub, whatever it is, I'll be fine. But obviously, as we know, the equation doesn't necessarily just mean you. And asymptomatic, you could be infecting your teammates, family, all that other kind of stuff. It was good to hear. And I know that that we'll talk about him at some point. But one of the things that Kenny Clark said earlier this week, I'm very mindful of what I'm doing here. I don't want to get anybody else sick, and I need to know what the team's going to do. And I'm very aware of what I'm walking into when I go to work now at training camp. You want guys that are aware like that. So that veteran core is going to be big in hopefully keeping it at a minimum. And so far, the Packers haven't really been hit too hard. I'm knocking on wood here because obviously we don't want that to change.
Right. And I think that'll be interesting to see too. And so far, the guys have said all the right things. Now, as we've kind of seen, all it can take is one. And if you get one person who doesn't do the right things, then it can all unravel very quickly. It's very much an exercise in accountability and self-discipline here in the first however long until if and when this virus gets under control. So, the rules and the protocols and everything like that is just kind of a fascinating portion. It's unfortunate that we have to have them, but we do. Just a fascinating watch for what team. There might be a little bit of luck involved too, quite frankly. What team has a player get sick at the wrong time could lead to the difference between a home playoff game and an early exit. And like I said, it's unfortunate that it is that way, but that's the world that we're dealing with in 2020. And the NFL clearly thinks that they can manage. So we'll see if that turns out to be true. Like I said, they're going to start, despite what an argument we had on Twitter earlier this week seemed to think, Jason, but they're going to start. We'll see if they finish.
Right.
One person who will not start or finish is Devin Funchess, and Devin Funchess opted out of the NFL season earlier this week. Just was unable to bring himself to come to work. I shouldn't really word it. I worded that poorly, so I do apologize to that, but just didn't feel safe and was unable, he thought, to start and finish the season and feel comfortable. He had a family member that had the virus earlier in the offseason, so he kind of saw its effects firsthand that way. Basically said he was trying to keep himself and his family safe. So with trying to do that, the Packers wide receiver opted out of the 2020 season. So that puts a bit of a hole in the Packers receiving core. But just in general, Jason, it's kind of hard to talk about these things and go through football specifically and what the football things mean. But I mean, what does this mean for the Packers receiving core going forward now that Funchess won't be part of it?
So I talked about this a little bit on Quick Slants earlier this week or last week. It's going to make an impact, but it's not going to be totally significant. And if it is, one of the things I said was if a guy that has never played in your offense and that didn't play at all last year and it's on a 1-year prove-it deal, is the absence of him is going to materially change the offense. That's a problem for the Packers. And they might have miscalculated their wide receiver room. So what this does obviously is opens up a door for a guy, because I think we talked about it maybe on a last show, or I know I've talked about it with Paul before. The Packers for a long time, it wasn't a matter of if they'd keep 6, they kept 6 receivers. Well, now they can't. I mean, it really doesn't make sense to, because you've got so many other guys that are going to catch the football out of the backfield, tight ends. So 5 wide receivers seems to be the number. And so that's going to open the door for one of those fringe guys. Like it could be a Jake Kumerow. I mean, Jake Kumerow might not have been with the Packers. Maybe he sticks around now because they need that extra body. Reggie Begelton's going to be fighting like heck. I mean, he looks like, when you look at him as a football player, he looks like a great physical specimen. But again, Canadian Football League, you don't know what he can do in the pros. So it's really, I think, more of an impact to the bottom of the depth chart than the top. Even though some might have said, well, Funchess could potentially become that number 2 wide receiver. The Packers already feel like they've got a good, solid room. That's why they didn't add a lot of receivers. So I don't think they're worried. And until I see that I need to be, it really doesn't concern me too much at all. And for the record, I support Funchess and any of those players. Again, it's a personal decision. We really have to support them, the person, and they know what's best for them and their family.
It appears I have an imposter in the chat because somebody's listed under my name and saying that a lot of people don't think it pertains to them. So that's interesting nonetheless. So that ain't me. I didn't say that. So whoever you are, show yourself.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. I'm not that concerned about it. But
yeah,
if somebody wants to be me that badly, then by all means, I suppose. So yeah, I agree with you. It's one of those. If Devin Funchess was the difference between being a Super Bowl contender versus a fringe playoff team, then this Packers team probably wasn't very good in the first place. And that's nothing against Devin Funchess, but that's just the reality. A backup wide receiver, because I didn't think he was even going to be a starter. I thought he was going to be the third wide receiver at the highest behind Allen Lazard and Devontae Adams. So you add that into the equation. Now it gives a potential possibility to step up for Reggie Begelton to make the roster, Jake Kumaro at the back end of the roster, but mostly Marquez Valdes-Scantling and Equanimeous St. Brown. And LaFleur mentioned St. Brown by name today in his press conference, which I thought was interesting as well. So that's what I'm looking forward to based on what LaFleur said today. It's unfortunate that Funchess is unable to play this season, or choosing not to play this season, but we wish him the best, obviously, and support his decision 100%. So I can't blame a man for taking his fate in his own hands, obviously. So good for him on that. The NFL Top 100 started this week, and I didn't start. It started and finished, excuse me. And Kenny Clark was snubbed, and there is no other way to put it. I don't have a good way to say it. It was piss poor, and it's just unfathomable to me that the NFL players don't realize Kenny Clark is a top 100 player. So I don't know. Jason, can you make sense of it? Because I can't.
Well, there's another thing I've said too, is the voting process for these things and the Pro Bowl is broken. It's just not, something that I think we should get too worked up over. Players, recency bias, all that kind of stuff. Mark Eckel on Pack-A-Day this past week said he's covered the NFL for many, many years. He knows the players don't take it anywhere near as seriously as the fans who get upset do. So, I mean, we know Kenny Clark is great. He knows he's great. And look, if it adds some fuel to his fire, that's great for us Packers fans, and it's great for the Packers. It's very bad for the offensive linemen that are lining up across from him, because he's going to be very angry. And he's also very still not paid and looking to do that. So there's a lot of reasons, many, many millions of reasons why Kenny Clark is going to want to run through all of anything that's standing in his way, including a brick wall. And right now, I don't know if I'd give a brick wall a great chance against Kenny Clark. So it's a joke. It's broken. I've never been really big on this whole top 100 thing because it is voted for by the players. It's another example. It's another example of how they don't get it right. It's the same thing. It's kind of the same thing as, I'm going way back in the crates here, but Jeff Saturday being voted to the Pro Bowl as a Packers center back in 2012. I mean, those are the types of things that happen when you let the wrong people vote. And I know that sounds I'm chastising people's judgment. Look, as fans, it's great. I remember going to baseball games back in the day when part of the fun of it all was filling out your ballot and sticking it in the box on your way out, and you voted for all of your team's players, whether they deserve to be there or not. As fans, that's great. If you're putting out a list that's going out on mainstream media, ESPN, NFL, all of that other kind of stuff, I wish there was a little bit more thought that went into it. It's clear that's just not how it works.
Yeah, sure seems that way. And, that's okay. Those lists, they're for discussions like this. I mean, two idiots sitting around talking about why Kenny Clark wasn't on the top 100 list is all that. Because honestly, do you really think in a negotiation, Brian Gutekunst to go, well, I don't know, Kenny, your peers sure didn't think that you were a top 100 player, so we shouldn't have to pay you like that. But no, of course not. They've called him an elite line of scrimmage defender more than once. So that leads you to believe how they value him, how they feel about him, and what their plans are for him moving forward. And we got
just so you know, Jake, we solved the mystery of who you are in the chat. It's your mom. So it's it's Mrs. Westendorf. So
it's a J Westendorf. So hi, Mom.
She figured out your password, man. You're in trouble.
Yeah, we're gonna have to figure that out. But real concerns over here, if you can't tell. Kenny Clark, like I mentioned, we'll talk a little bit more about him later because I think we have a bit of a surprise for some people. And it's not really a surprise, but unless you didn't watch me and Jimmy talk yesterday, then maybe you don't know. So one other report that came out this week that was interesting, and it came out, I believe, on Thursday or Friday. Ross Uglum posted a story to PackerReport.com, and he was reporting that the Packers have showed an interest and made a competitive offer to Snacks Harrison, Damon Harrison, formerly of the Detroit Lions, spent some time with the New York Giants. He's a elite run-stopping nose tackle. So, Jason, I am surprised just because that doesn't seem like the type of defensive lineman they typically value. However, if you take a list of Packers fans' concerns, right at the top of the list is going to be that run defender, and there aren't a whole lot of players that are better than him in terms of stopping the run.
Yeah, this is one of those things I'm wondering if it happens if we're not in the current environment right now, because there's going to be some attrition and you have to plan for players, more guys being out than usual. So I don't think it's any secret the defensive line could use a boost. No pun intended, because Damon Harrison is a large individual, but a veteran that can come in and play football and pick up the defense, like all those things that you sign a veteran for to be able to do more so than would a rookie. And so I don't know that this fact that it comes out is necessarily an indictment on a guy like Dean Lowry or Tyler Lancaster. I mean, it's you could make a case there. Montravius Adams is obviously, problematic because he just hasn't been able to find the field. But here it is again, the Packers getting active, going after a name that's been thrown out there. So if it doesn't happen, I know there's going to be plenty of fans that get frustrated. But the Packers are trying, they're trying. And it's not just Damon Harrison. I mean, there's a very familiar cornerback that we all know very much and know and love very well that the Packers have also apparently already talked to and may have a plan in place for as well. So, these are the new Packers. And the fun thing about it is they get in the conversation. They don't always get the guy, but they at least are part of the conversation.
Yeah, and it gives us more stuff to talk about, which is clearly the first reason why they do that. So I'm appreciative of that first and foremost. But yeah, you're right. Tramon Williams, they said no updates on that. It really appears he's a break glass in case of emergency type of player. Damon Harrison is one. Like I said, it kind of fills one of those voids of a run defender and could improve the Packers' run defense. Everson Griffin was the name. We talked about him last week. That's a big name because he came out of Minnesota. He's a big-time pass rusher, obviously double-digit sacks the last couple of years. We'll see if anything happens there. I'm kind of with you. I wonder how much, if any, this current dynamic has changed the way that teams are going about their business. Gutekunst said today that they weren't any more or less active than they typically are. So that was interesting just because, I mean, you would think just from a distance that a healthcare crisis or a health crisis would slow things down, but maybe it hasn't. I do know that I think it was Peter King or somebody reported that Snacks Harrison has had some interest. It's just that he's still figuring out what he wants to do. Kind of similar to the situation Tramon Williams is in, where he's figuring out. He kind of said that the two have talked. The money's got to be right. The situation's got to be right. So Tramon Williams may be the one holding all of this up as well. So we'll see what that means going forward, if anything. So I'll be interested to look at that as well. So that is the big news report of the week, if you will. The Packers have some interest in Snacks Harrison to potentially fix their run defense. So I think that'll make a lot of people happy if he were to sign in Green Bay. So we'll have to do a poll this week. Packers can only sign one guy. What do you think it'll be? So we'll check that on the Twitter page. We'll see what you think on that, but I'm interested to see all that. Ultimately, I was in Green Bay this weekend, so I feel like I should talk about that a little bit. And the first question I had on it came from Jimmy, and he asked, what was more memorable, taking Blake to the Hall of Fame or taking Jimmy to the Hall of Fame? Jimmy, as much as I appreciated the time we were able to spend together and the stuff we were able to do as far as a show and just kind of sit there and talk a little bit afterwards, being able to, and granted, I know Blake's 10 months old and she's not going to remember this years from now, but kind of being able to watch her experience some of this stuff for the first time was pretty special. I've got some pictures of her next to the Super Bowl trophies, the Favre murals, some of the stuff with Zadarius Smith jersey, Aaron Rodgers. I mean, just kind of being able to see that through her eyes, if you will, for the first time. It was a lot of fun. It was pretty special, but Green Bay is awesome. It's always great to be there. Jason, I will tell you the buzz is a little different. And Jason actually so for the Vikings fans that are watching it, Jason, if you could move your head a little bit one way or the other, that's called a Super Bowl. That's called a Super Bowl trophy right back there. There's actually two of them in there, which is two more. And there's actually two more to the left of that as well. There's four of those in the Packers trophy case, and that's four more than the Vikings would have in there. So I know you may not understand what that is, but those are called Super Bowl trophies, and they give those to you when you win a world championship, something the Minnesota Vikings have never done in the Super Bowl era. So just in case you were confused, that is where we're at. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was cool. Jason, we've been through the Hall of Fame together and stuff too. So it's still pretty cool. They don't have anything new as far as exhibits and everything like that since the last time I was there. But again, I imagine a large portion of that is because of the COVID pandemic. So that was pretty cool. And hopefully we're able to get back in here, all of us back there as soon as possible. And we figure this thing out and get rolling. That's what's on tap here for the rest of the week. So let's go here. Today's Sunday. So tomorrow we have a double dip for you guys. Happy Hour, of course, by Maggie Loney and Perry Goldstein. Special thank you to Maggie for entertaining my daughter today. And they got her a pony, not a real pony, obviously, but a little rider pony. And Blake loves it. It's awesome to watch. And of course, the return of the Freezer podcast. So Sanjay, Matt Jensen, and Fred Thurston will be back. I believe the way Fred said it, they were going to, quote, bring some funk after the girls. So I don't know what that means. So you're going to have to tune in to find out. And I will have to do the same myself. Wednesday's the big one. Lombardi's Bar. We mentioned somebody getting snubbed earlier. We do have a special guest, and that is Kenny Clark. Kenny Clark will be in Lombardi's Bar and talking with the boys about his off season, what this season is going to look like, his plans, his goals, all that sort of stuff. And then of course, a little earlier in the week, we have the Quick Slants podcast hosted by Jason Perone. We don't have a topic for that just yet. The nice part about that show is it's just about live and reactive as much as it can be. You can follow me on Twitter through the week at Jacob Westendorf. You can follow Jason. He is at Jason Perone. And as I mentioned earlier, Paul's not here, but you can follow him at Paul_Brettel. You can follow the Twitter handle. It's at GameOnWI, and like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Those are both Game On Wisconsin. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you guys for everything that you've done in these first couple of weeks. We look forward to week number 3 starting tomorrow. Jimmy and I unable to get tattooed this week, but we do plan on
huge fail.
It's Jimmy's fault. So we do plan on a couple. I'm serious. It's Jimmy's fault. So we do plan on a couple weeks from now, him coming to the Illinois area and getting that done. So we're getting that finalized.
Way to go, Jimmy Christensen. You just earned yourself a trip to Rockford, Illinois. Instead of getting tattooed in Green Bay, now you have to go to Rockford.
I think that's a fair punishment considering this was his sole mission and he found a way to fail. So sorry, Jimmy. That's the way that it is. That's the way the cookie crumbles, as they might say. So everybody, thank you guys for listening. Appreciate your time. And we will be back next weekend, 1 week closer to the NFL season. Stay safe, stay healthy, and go Pack Go.
Thank you.